Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress. Norway chess is drawing to a close and the chess world is counting down towards the resumption of the 2020 Candidates Tournament. It's only 17 days away. It will all start again on Sunday, November 1st in Yekaterinburg in Russia to play the second half of the Candidates Tournament, which was cut short in March because of the corona pandemic. It is the 29th candidate cycle in the history of the World Championship, and on Chess to Impress we're building up by looking at the first 28 candidate cycles. And this is episode number 16. It started in 1883 where Zukertort and Steinitz won the tournament, which meant they played the first official World Championship match 3 years later. Steinitz gained a rematch against world champion Lasker in St. Petersburg 1895-1896, and Paul Keres won the tournament in the Netherlands in 1938 to gain the right to challenge world champion Aljechin for a match. But that match never happened because of World War II. The first official candidates tournament was held in Budapest and Moscow in 1950. David Bronstein was the winner. And Vasily Smyslov won 2 candidate cycles, Zurich 1953 and Amsterdam 1956. Misha Tal was world champion Botvinnik's next challenger, and Tigran Petrosyan won Curaçao 1962, the year after he beat Botvinnik and became world champion. The candidates tournaments were then changed into candidates matches, and Spassky won the first 2 installments in 1965 and 1968. Bobby Fischer beat Tigran Petrosyan in Buenos Aires 1971 to qualify for the match of the century against Spassky. Anatoly Karpov beat Viktor Korchnoi in Moscow 1974 to gain the right to challenge Fischer for the world title. Fischer didn't play, Karpov became world champion by default. Korchnoi won the 2 next cycles and both times lost the world championship match against Karpov. Kasparov came on the scene in 1984 and became world champion in 1985. Karpov came back, won Linares 1987, and it is there in red because we're going to look at a game from that match to gain the right for a 4th match against Kasparov. And in 1990, he qualified for a 5th match against Kasparov. In 1993, it was Nigel Short's turn to challenge Kasparov, and in 1995, it was Anand. Alexei Shirov should have played Kasparov after beating Vladimir Kramnik in Cazorla 1998, but he never got a match. Kramnik did. He beat Kasparov in the year 2000 to become the 14th world champion. Peter Leko was Kramnik's first challenger, and in Elista 2007 4 players qualified for the World Championship tournament: Aronian, Gelfand, Grishuk and Leko. Anand would become world champion. Topalov, Gelfand and Carlsen were Anand's next opponents. Carlsen beat Anand. Anand came back to qualify for a rematch against Carlsen. Carlsen won again, and Karyakin and Kaurana were Carlsen's last opponents. So there we are, Yekaterinburg 2020. The winner of that event will challenge Magnus Carlsen for the world title. As mentioned, we're going back to the 1985-1987 cycle, and there were 3 interzonals. The players in green qualified for the candidates tournament. Yusupov, Belyatsky, Portis and Chernin qualified from the Tunis interzonal. Chernin after a playoff against Gavrikov. The second interzonal was held in Taxco in Mexico, and Timan, Nogueras, Tal and Spraggett qualified. The last interzonal was held in Biel in Switzerland, and Vaganyan, Sarawan, Sokolov and Short qualified. Short after a playoff with Van der Wiel and Torre. These 12 qualifiers were joined by Smyslov, Korchnoi and Ribli, numbers 2, 3 and 4 from the previous cycle. And the final spot went to Spassky, who was given a wild card by the organizers. And these 16 players played a round-robin candidates tournament, from which the top 4 would qualify for the knockout phase. So in this cycle we saw a combination of a candidates tournament and candidates matches for the first time. This is the top 10 from the candidates tournament. Yusupov, Vaganyan, Sokolov and Timan qualified for the candidates matches. Timan after a playoff against Misha Tal. And in the candidates matches, Sokolov beat Vaganyan, Yusupov beat Timan, and Sokolov narrowly beat Yusupov in the final. Was Sokolov now the challenger? No, not yet, because Karpov had earned the privilege of being seeded directly into the challenger match as part of the agreement regarding the World Championship matches against Kasparov of 1984, 1985 and 1986. They had played 3 matches already. And Karpov beat Sokolov easily in a challenger match and qualified for a 4th match against world champion Kasparov. The road to the World Championship match is very long and hard and arduous for anybody, but for Sokolov it was even longer. Interzonals, candidates tournaments, candidates matches, and then the challenger match, and that last one proved too much for him. Let's look at the last game of this challenger match. White Andrei Sokolov with a rating of 26.45, black Anatoly Karpov with a rating of 27.10. Karpov was leading by 3 points in the match, and Sokolov really had to win. It is the 26th of March 1987, and Sokolov opened with the e-pawn, as he always did. And Karpov always played the Caro-Kann defense. d4 on the second move was played many times by Sokolov in this match, but he did not get anywhere with that move. So he's returning to the move he played in the first game of the match, leading to the Panov variation of the Caro-Kann, c2, c4. d5, the players are following the main line, taking in the center, knight f3, and here e6 was Karpov's choice in game 1 of this match. As Kasparov writes, Karpov is taking into account his opponent's condition, being 3 points down in the match, and changes tune, says Kasparov. Instead of e6, he took on c3 in this game 11. B takes, taking towards the center, g6 and h4. And Grandmaster Makarichev writes, Sokolov is abandoning his competitive qualities and is replacing them with sheer passion. He's attacking. If he goes down, at least he'll go down fighting. Bishop g7, h5. Sokolov keeps pushing the h-pawn. Knight c6, rook b1, queen c7, bishop a3 and bishop f5. Karpov is responding to White's aggressive setup by just making healthy development moves. Very instructive. And look at this move, rook b5. Sokolov is attacking on both sides of the board. And after a6 he goes to c5, sharpening up the battle even more with this rook maneuver, which looks very unusual, but the engine, who doesn't care about something being unusual, does not condemn this way of playing. It says the position is roughly equal. Karpov played queen d7, queen b3, and castling against the storm, as we call it. Sokolov opens the h-file, h takes and bishop c4. White is aiming all his pieces at the enemy's king, but Karpov keeps a cool head. He played bishop f6, preventing White playing knight g5, which would put a lot of pressure on f7. This way. So bishop f6 prevents that. d4, striking in the center, b5, attacking the bishop. Bishop went to d5, and knight a5. And this is a very complex position, which objectively is in the balance, claims my engine, my silicon friend. Black is now attacking the white queen, and here Sokolov could have reached an equal position with queen b4. And let's look at this variation, which was given by international master Gert Lichterink in his newspaper article during the match. The knight then goes back to b7, attacking the rook, and then there is knight e5, counter-attacking black's queen. And if we now take on c5, then the queen goes off the board, knight d3 check with a fork, winning the queen back. King f1, knight takes b4, knight takes f6 check, e takes, bishop takes rook, rook takes back, and bishop takes b4. The dust has settled, and this is an equal position. So let's go back. We played queen b4, knight b7, knight e5, and then we took on c5 with the knight. You can also take on e5, that's the other variation, and then there is d takes e5, and now king g7 should be played, and that's okay for black, because after d takes e5 you cannot take on c5, because then there is queen h4, and black will be checkmated over the h-file. So all this after the move knight a5 and then queen b4. Sokolov must have seen these variations and saw that he really cannot gain an advantage that way, so he went back with the queen to d1 instead. Knight b7, and please note that this rook has no squares, it can't go to c6 because then the bishop on d5 is unprotected. Of course Sokolov had seen this move, and what he should have done is take on b7, queen takes, and this is better for black with the bishop pair. But Sokolov had seen something else. Instead of taking the knight, he played knight e5, counter-attacking the queen. Bishop takes e5, and you can still build out by taking on b7, but Sokolov continues on the path of self-destruction. He plays d takes e5, and he has overseen something. Of course, Karpov took the rook now. That's a full rook in the back for black, but Sokolov played queen d4, and must have thought that the threats of queen h4 with a checkmate threat, and also e5, e6, attacking the queen, the checkmate threat on h8, was winning for him. He must have got very excited here. Was he going to win his first game in this match? But no, Karpov had looked further, and the refutation must have come as a cold shower for Sokolov. If you want to put the video on pause, look for yourself. It's not very easy, but let's see if you can find the refutation of wedge threats of queen h4 and e5, e6. Black is a rook up, and how can he survive the attack? The solution is knight d3 check, king f1, and then the nice move queen d7 to a7, and that is indeed the refutation of white sacrifice. It's the only move, but now black is winning. It's attacking the queen. If you go to h4 as planned, then there is queen takes f2 check, and that swaps the queens. Queen takes, knight takes, king takes, and black has a decisive material advantage. He has given back a knight, but as we know, he was a rook up, so he is still an exchange up in his endgame. Very nice. Knight d3 check, and then queen a7. It's the only way to refute white's attack, but Karpov found it. Sokolov did not play queen h4, he played bishop takes e7. Karpov swapped the queens, c takes, and white has one more threat left, which Karpov neutralizes with his next move. The only threat that white has left is bishop f6 and then checkmate on h8. But with the move knight d3 to f4, Karpov takes that threat out of the position, and here Andrei Sokolov resigned. Not only the game, but also the match. It was scheduled over 14 games, but after 11 games, Karpov had a 4-point advantage, and the last 3 games were not played. White is still a rook down. You can take on a8 or on f8, but the rook will recapture and you will still be a piece down. You can also play for checkmate with bishop f6, but then there is knight h5 blocking the h-file. And after bishop takes a8, rook takes a8, black has an extra piece. So Sokolov resigned after knight f4, and Karpov, by winning just one match, had qualified for match number 4 against world champion Garry Kasparov. And I covered that match in my series on all World Championship matches, which I did in the build-up towards the Carlsen-Caruana match. I will put the link up here. I hope you enjoyed this video and that you'll keep counting down towards the resumption of the Candidates Tournament with me. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.